At 3:12 a.m., my phone lit up the ceiling like a small ambulance and congratulated me for something I hadn't done. HealthPartners sent a welcome to your expanded family coverage email with my wife listed as subscriber, a woman I didn't know listed as her domestic partner, a new one attached under the partner's name, and my own electronic attestation recorded 2 minutes earlier from an IP in Uptown. I stared at my name inside a paragraph that turned me into a co-signer on lives I had never met. We live in a 1920s bungalow in Minneapolis' Longfellow neighborhood, 6 blocks from Minnehaha Avenue, where the light rail hums like a distant hairdryer. The house is honest about its age. The plaster sheds little commas. The basement smells like plants. The windows argue with February. The front room is my combination office and shipping area for the e-commerce store I built out of weekend and stubbornness, selling reclaimed wood shelves and refurbished turntables to people who think grooves are a kind of truth. I keep a rented garage bay in the Seward neighborhood where I sandboard and talk to them until they behave. My wife, Cara, is a flight attendant based out of Mississippi with a schedule that looks like a math puzzle: red-eye swaps, deadheads, and turnarounds that run a person for time zones faster than breath. On the calendar we look like a team of 2. In life, we often felt like ghosts who shared a mortgage and a dent in the couch. Money moved like a draft under the back door. We kept up, mostly. The Transit Connect van needed a catalytic converter after someone discovered the fast-leaving toy of a Sawzall under a night sky. Insurance helped, but the body shop wanted cash to keep the line moving. An MRI on my right knee last winter left us with the co-insurance bill that taught me the difference between patients and patients with billing. Cara lost her per diem bump when she got temporarily assigned to the smaller aircraft routes. My February custom-built client asked for a discount in the language of friendship. Dollars left the house like teenagers without saying when they'd be back. The HealthPartners email had attachments that carried teeth. One displayed a domestic partnership affidavit signed by Cara and a woman named Lila, notarized digitally through a vendor I'd never used, with a timestamp of 3:08 a.m. Another listed a newborn Eva under Lila's name, marked eligible as of birth with proof pending. The third showed my full name in a box labeled attestation witness/household co-signer, captured via e-signature from an IP address that geolocated to an apartment complex on Lagoon Avenue in Uptown. Along the photo, tiny odd entries scrolled like ants: remote session verified by ID quiz, keystroke pattern matched, geofudge tolerated. I heard the radiator knock like a polite ghost and tried to move air out of my chest. The Nest doorbell had caught Cara coming home at 12:41 a.m., her roller bag bumping our entry mat, her hair pulled into the kind of knot people wear when they need both hands for life. At 1:09, she left again with only her keys and our flat white envelope tucked under her arm. At 2:53, she returned with a small bag from Target that made the white noise rustle of receipts trying to hide behind mascara. The camera captured stillness like a job. It did not capture intent. I printed everything because paper makes my head quieter. My brother laser printer lies under the sideboard like a troll. It performed beautifully in the middle of the night. I wrote the time and IP on the top of each page with the carpenter's pencil I keep behind my ear when I want to feel like the kind of man who knows what he's doing. I said Equifax TransUnion, and Experian freezes the way you set bones. I logged into our Wells Fargo and set alerts on the mortgage and the line of credit, put branch-only requirements on any moves, kept names and employee ID like baseball cards. I moved $6,500 from our joint account to my business account at Affinity Plus because panic can be practical. I forwarded the email to myself into a dedicated folder with the kind of names that look like civility insurance legal Cara. When dawn elbowed its way down our street, I had a plan that wouldn't look like it on a whiteboard. I called HealthPartners and placed a fraud alert on the affidavits. Got a case number HBFRM-11823 attached to my name and address. I asked for the vendor information for the notary. A woman whose voice suggested she has seen variations of my mess said NotaryCam had handled the signatures and sent the audit trail. I booked an appointment with a lawyer on Nicola because I didn't know yet whether I needed one, but I recognized the sound of a story that would. I put on coffee I wouldn't drink because it represented normal. Cara's schedule sat on our shared Google Calendar like a dare. BOS town layover in Denver. Deadhead to Tampa. She had an innocent alibi printed in fonts. The woman on the affidavit, Lila, meant nothing to me at 7 a.m. At 7:40, she meant something different after I posted a courier, who treats addresses like personalities, slid a misdirected envelope under our door with a sticky note. This looked important. The envelope held a welcome packet from a building on Lagoon Avenue called Callahan Shaw's Apartments. It welcomed Ms. L. Harmon and Ms. K. Harmon to Unit 510, included 2 fobs, a garage pass, and a LuxerOne parcel locker instructions. The mailing address printed on the letter was our house on 38th Street. The phone number listed under contact in case of emergency was mine, wrong by 1 digit. I wanted to believe in cousin-level explanations. Cara has a younger sister in Egan who bounces between apartments and boyfriends with the kind of luck that thinks it's an identity. But the letter said Harmon, and my wife's last name is mine. I walked 2 blocks to Dogwood Coffee because caffeine in a paper cup makes things feel solvable. On my way, my phone pinged with a PC Optimum alert for a purchase at the Lake Street Target at 1:57 a.m. Similac formula, newborn diapers, and scented wipes. The card was our joint. My vendor receipts usually arrive like confetti after a good sale. Watching a big box retailer timestamp my life felt like being graded by a stranger. We had planned to meet Cara's parents that Sunday for an early dinner at Kincaid's in St. Paul for her mom's birthday. I brought a folder to her family meal because that's who I became during that day. I laid out the affidavit, the HealthPartners emails, the notary audit trail with its bold assurance about my keystrokes, the misdelivered Callahan Shores fob's letter, the PC Optimum receipt, and the Nest timestamps. I presented the facts in the way I present measurements to a client flat, careful, uninterested in telling anyone where to put their feelings. Cara's mother studied the documents like a person who reads recipes for the technique. Her face did things I did not want to draw. Her father asked me if I was accusing his daughter of a crime over mashed potatoes. Cara looked at me and then at the fork and then back at the paper and said she felt ambushed in a restaurant where you could watch strangers decide between salmon and steak like they were picking a future. At home, she offered a version of grace that asked for forgiveness to buy habits credit. She said the Uptown apartment was a crash pad she shared with her coworker doing tight turns when driving back to Longfellow past midnight felt like a dare. That a co-worker had a child and the next with a talent for making paperwork into cages, and that the domestic partnership affidavit was a hack to get HealthPartners to cover the baby for a month while the court took its sweet time. She said my attestation was a test in the notary portal that had accidentally submitted. She said if I loved her I would trust her to triage harm even if the method looked ugly. She said love in present tense as if grammar could guarantee anything. I remind myself that love and proof use different verbs. I wrote boundaries on paper because the act of writing calmed me. I froze our joint visa, opened a solo checking account, and moved auto-pays like a person swapping wires in a breaker box. I emailed HealthPartners and noticed that no dependent could be added using my information without my wet signature in an office with fluorescent lights. I used phrases like I do not consent and attestation invalid. I hired the lawyer and got a file number -1944 that made me feel like I had a place in his cabinet. He sent a cease and desist demanding a rollback of the domestic partnership coverage and a signed disclosure of any benefits or accounts using my SSN or name without my consent. He drafted a letter to Cara stating that if any child existed for whom my name had been used, I would submit to a court-admissible DNA test without hesitation. He included a date, a lab, and an appointment time in Uptown, the kind of practical invitation only paper knows how to make. The independent witness arrived like a door opening quietly. Our neighbour, Greta, who manages the Hy-Vee pharmacy on 46, stopped me on my sidewalk and asked if everything was okay because a woman matching Cara's co-worker from photos had picked up a prescription for a newborn the day before and had used our address for verification when Greta asked for one. The woman had handed over a benefits card that matched Cara's HealthPartners. Greta didn't want to intrude. She wanted me to know because she has a memory for addresses like a librarian has for shelves. She gave me the time 10:18 a.m. She told me the call ID on the file was 1 digit off from mine. The next days turned into percussion. Wells Fargo flagged an attempted $18,200 draw on our HELOC at 5:54 a.m., blocked by my branch-only note. Case number assigned, WFR-28231. I sent a letter to confirm your mail forwarding to a P.O. box in Uptown I'd never heard of. I filed a report with a speech case number MSP-6429 because mail crimes are how 100 normal lives become exhibits. CRA because borders between systems. A theory sent a notice about a dependent claim under my name that had been initiated and then paused 10 minutes later. My lawyer said a draft is still a kind of attempt. The LuxerOne app, which I did not have, but which the Callahan-Shaw's welcome letter helpfully described. Allah's guest, my lawyer, used the building manager's guest access to pull a parcel addressed to Leela from a family law firm on Nicollet. It thanked her for proof of support for a minor E and listed me as a financial guarantor and alternate guardian. Words sunk teeth into me I did not know they had. The public scene I thought would break something happened at Callahan-Shaw's, in the carpeted common room where the building hosted a resident's breakfast. I am not a man who likes muffins that taste like recalcitrant policy, but I needed a room with witnesses who did not share DNA. I stood there with a folder and told the manager, with 20 people pretending to stir coffee, that my name had been used without my consent on a domestic partnership affidavit to add a partner and baby to my wife's insurance. I shared the audit trail with the Uptown IP. I showed my HR verification from Carr's airline list and swapped the night of the notary session. I produced the mail forwarding notice. I laid the LuxerOne letter on the table. The manager's face moved from hospitality to something administrative. Residents shifted like chairs. A man who works compliance at a bank on Washington Avenue murmured that title-like matters show up in insurance too and suggested I call HealthPartners Special Investigations Unit. He texted me a number from his work cell. I left feeling like a person who had just talked his own house out to echo. Cara accused me of taking our lies outside and shaking them over a hedge. She said the baby was not hers, that Leela was a co-worker whose ex had the energy and the spite to weaponize birth certificates and false claims, and that the apartment was the only place Leela could sleep without checking under doors. She said she had used my name only because the health plan demanded a household attestation and that she had expected to change it before anything settled. She said courts and good intentions often race and get different medals. HealthPartners SIU investigator called me back and sounded like a person who keeps both sides of a story in her pockets. She pulled the notary vendor's keystroke logs and asked me to write my signature in front of a camera to compare. My R has a slant that a forger can imitate but not remember after a sentence. She put a hold on any claims for either and rescinded the domestic partnership a moment pending an in-person appearance by both signers with ID because policy can be alleged if someone holds it. She gave me a case number HBC-34007 and told me to save every bit of paper and every screen capture like they were breadcrumbs on a path. The next twist arrived in a tinier envelope than it deserved. A jewelry store on 50th and front mailed Cara a receipt for a financing plan on her ring, payable monthly to a private label credit card I had never seen. The purchase date aligned with the LuxerOne letter. The financing application listed our address and my name as the authorized user. The showroom cameras would have recorded whoever signed. I took the receipt to the store with my lawyer's letterhead and asked for the application. The clerk, who looked like someone who had been told to trust no one afternoon on a weekday, printed it. My signature had been improved from the notary's copy. The curve of the Y looked like someone had practiced until they liked me. The independent witness who mattered most came from Cara's world rather than mine. Our base supervisor at MSB, a woman whose posture makes committees salivate, emailed a verification letter after my lawyer requested it, confirming that Cara's assignment had been reassigned at 9:41 p.m. the night of the notary session and that she had not been on a flight at any time between midnight and 3 a.m. The letter did not accuse and did not soothe. I placed it on top of the stack in my folder because it was the neatest piece of fact I had seen all week. I walked around Lake Nokomis at sunrise like a person who is trying to wish their nervous system into obedience. I thought about the baby in the packet and in the SIU memo like you would think about whether it will happen whether you turn your head or not. Would you, if you were me, allow your name to be borrowed as a bridge for a child who needs insurance to get through the first month, knowing that bridges take bolts and bolts cost years? Or would you slam every door in the system and insist on swabs and appointments and a judge before lifting a finger? What is kindness to a child who did not file any paperwork? What is kindness to the person whose name got used like a utility? I filed a police report because banks like numbers and PD minus 2025 minus 11,844 and a postal inspector complained because the forwarded mail letter said P.O. Box as if it were a personality. I wrote Cara another letter because screens invite improvisation. I told her we would separate finances immediately. I listed the accounts I had opened, the ones I had closed, the autopays I had ported. I wrote that until we had a full accounting of where my name had been used, we would live like roommates who share walls and not lines. I wrote that if a court asked me to participate in establishing parentage, I would, but that I would not be participating in soft, sentimental drafts of law in the meantime. I wrote that I would still take out the garbage and fix the dripping under the kitchen sink. Boundaries do not have to remove kindness. They just have to survive it. We became the people who scheduled washing machine-like colleagues. Cara split her time between our house and the Uptown apartment with Leila, explained to me that her phone would be off after 8 a.m. on days when the baby slept, and left notes that said logistics and love and neat writing. She visited a legal aid clinic with Leila and came back with papers that converted stories into filings. She taped a copy of a protective order for Leila to our inside cabinet door so she would not lose it. She muzzled her romantic explanations, which made them more devastating. She said, in sentences that worked like patience, that she had chosen the fastest path to help someone and had not accounted for the cost. She said she did not know if she had made a mistake or if the world had made a structure in which this had been the only move. She said she would accept whatever consequence I handed our marriage like a person who knows courts reflect rules more than justice. The aftermath looks like work. HealthPartners rescinded the domestic partnership after the SIU pushed back on the notary session and the in-person ID failed to appear. The newborn's claims were retroactively denied and then paid by emergency medical assistance after a social worker with a name like an apology stapled the right forms together. Wells Fargo locked the line of credit until I came in with 2 ID and an affidavit. The banker wrote her badge number on my case file and handed me a cheap pen like a wand. USPS cancelled the forwarding and flight our address. The jewelry store voided the financing account after security reviewed the footage and decided my voice on the speakerphone and the man in the camera weren't the same person. They did not say who the man was. The Keller Onshore's manager updated Unit 510's file to remove our address and my emergency number and posted a notice to residents about guest access privileges. My name showed less power in that font. Cara and I are still married in a way that makes tax season complicated and quiet dinners feel like book clubs. She and I have a list taped above the coffee machine with rules that sound stern because sternness protects people like us. No signatures for the other under any circumstances. No dependents listed under our names. No use of any addresses except the ones we own. No notaries outside sunlight hours. No money transferred with explanations smaller than a paragraph. She writes down every hour she spends at the Uptown apartment and returns with receipts like a pilgrim. I keep my folder in a fireproof box next to the warranty on the water heater because my name is a machine I now service. The love part hurts. You can love someone who thinks hacked is a synonym for mercy. You can love someone who sees how a door doesn't open fast enough to get a child through it and believes the right thing is to pick the lock and apologize to the hinges later. You can love someone who drafted you into that audacity because you have spent years admiring the way they talk to strangers on planes as if all strangers could become less. You can also choose yourself with receipts because your name is the only tool you own that does the one job only it can do. We didn't become a headline. We became 2 people who now do household chores with the seriousness of priests. I still walk past Minneapolis Falls and count how many people are taking photos of water, as if proof makes it more real. I delivered a walnut mantle to a family in Kingfield who looked at me like the idea of what made them better. I shook the father's hand and didn't imagine what paperwork sits behind their life. Greta still waves from her pharmacy window with eyes that know too much about scripts and too little about outcomes. The Hy-Vee smells like cilantro and disinfectant, a combination that suggests we are all trying. People ask the question you would ask because it is the only one that matters. Did I go to the lab? Did I demand a test now, or would I wait for the baby's sake? Let the systems work. Trust the courts and the paper and the timing. I made my choice in private, and I will own it in private because life smaller than mine's it in that answer. What I can confess is the feeling of standing under the kitchen nightlight at 3:12 a.m. Again, months later, when my phone buzzed with a different confetti animation and Etsy sale of a record player to a buyer in Doulathon for one hot second, my body remembered insurance and fobs and audit trails and thought I was getting congratulated for harm. The human animal is not elegant. When sleep won't cooperate, I go into the front room and look at the nest of cords and shipping labels and my own little bureaucracy, one where I control the labels and choose the tape. I think about the apartment manager who said her building is full of people who needed a hallway more than a home. I think about Leila's baby, who will never know my name and who will still be fine, I hope, in ways that include exactly the right amount of my absence. I think about Cara's hands on an armrest at 30,000 feet, steadying a stranger who looks like they might fall apart upon landing. Then I think about my own name on a screen, black on white, inside a paragraph I didn't write, and I feel again the unreasonable impulse to stand in a room and introduce myself to the policy. This is mine. This name belongs to me. The last image that keeps returning is the HealthPartners header, right against the dark ceiling. confetti dots drifting like winter birds in the streetlight beyond our curtains. The light slanted down the hall toward our front door where the Nest camera's tiny circle glows, an unblinking pupil that catches comings and goings with equal indifference. Outside, Minhar Avenue breathes, the train whispers, and the wind moves the neighbour's cottonwood in a way that makes it look like it is nodding off. I stand in the quiet and feel both righteous and small. Somewhere, somebody else is getting a 3 a.m. email with a life-changing noun in the subject line. Somewhere, a baby coughs like a hinge, a woman stacks diapers in a closet that used to have nothing in it but hope, and a man learns what his name is for.